Ahoy, crypto pirates! Welcome to your Discourse Syndicate. Captain RG3 steering the ship for you, missing the buttons, all the good stuff like usual. How's everybody doing? Welcome to the chat room. Welcome, folks. What a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week it has been. I hope everybody had a happy Mother's Day and love those gains. Love those big, sweet, fat hex gains. Everybody's doing well, I know. Those bags are looking good. Crypto is crypto once again, as long as hex is in it. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. This is going to be so cool. We've got Mr. G. Edward Griffin coming on to the show with, guys, if you haven't read his book, he's got a book called The Creature from Jekyll, and this is the 5th edition. I think he's actually got the 6th edition out, so that picture might be old, but he has a book out that talks about the Fed and how it may have been put together and what that means to us, and we're going to get to talk about that with him, and then maybe explain to him how maybe he can see how hex fits in with that and taking the power away from the Fed and putting it back into our hands by using our little product called hex. So how's everybody doing? Crypty Girl's in the house. Look at that. Long live hex. Crypto King. That's our producer, guys. He's the one who actually brought Mr. Griffin to us. So this is cool. Gary's in the house. Long live hex. Everybody, Hex Squadron. Look at you guys. I'm not going to get all into everybody. Welcome. Glad you're here. I'm going to try and stay away from the chat room so that I can focus on our guests tonight. So please, if you're asking questions, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just going to try and do what the captain does. I know there's a lot of you red pillars out there, and there's a lot of you crypto guys out there, but I'm going to come from it from my angle. We're going to talk to Mr. Griffin, and maybe he and I can meet somewhere and get some information across to each other. All right. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring up our guest, Mr. G. Edward Griffin. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for bringing me aboard.
Thank you for coming on. We really appreciate you joining us, and our community has been really excited when we heard you were going to come on. This stream is actually a community stream. Discourse Syndicate is open to all of our all of the what we call hexicans. We all support a crypto community called Hex. It's a product, a finished product, a coin, and it has a lot of attributes that I think you're going to be very interested in. So we'll get into that later. But first, let's talk about you. So how are you doing now? Did you have a good Mother's Day yourself?
Well, actually, yeah, I did. I had a beautiful day. I have a little retreat up here. It's not a hideaway, really. Everybody knows where I am, but it's back in the boonies. That's probably one of the reasons my picture isn't looking too cool right now, because we have a satellite connection. But anyway, the reason I'm up here is I try and get some work done up here. And my wife drove up, and I met her at the Madonna Inn. If anybody out in California knows about that place, it's a magnificent place. It's a fun place to go. All the rooms are theme rooms, and it's kind of like Disneyland hotel sort of thing. So we spent the day there yesterday and hung out there this morning, and drove back to the cabin here just in time to get the show done. So it was a very relaxing day for a change for us.
Nice. Yeah, I love it up there. I like the Big Sur area, and in Monterey, and all. It's just gorgeous up there. If you want to go to a retreat, that's a great place to go. Is like Big Sur, and all that area. Very nice, very nice. So I wanted to ask first. I wanted to get to know you as a human being. I mean, you're a generation. A couple of generations from me. You grew up, you were born like right during the Great Depression. Like you were just a young child. I'd like to kind of see how that molded you, because I mean, you were raised by parents who were trying to survive the Great Depression. What was that like?
Well, of course, I didn't remember it as a depression. I guess kids never do. They never remember those things.
No.
So, I mean, to me, it was just a heck of a wild ride as a kid. I was enjoying life, and right now I'm trying to get rid of my controls on the cancer, but I mean, on the camera, I guess you can see me okay. So anyway, back to me. Yeah, in Detroit, Michigan, of all places. It was a nice town, and we lived on the poor side of Detroit, but I didn't know it was the poor side. So I had a lot of fun, and there was a depression going on. My father was always looking for a job, but I always was able to. I always had clothes I had food, and I had a chance to play with my playmates. So I didn't see any of the sociological earmarks of a depression, or if I saw it, I didn't recognize it, because that's just the way it was. So I guess I can't say, well, when I was a kid, I had it so hard, everybody said, but I had it harder than you. No, that wasn't the case.
No, but as you came to, though, it was, the greatest generation was started. What was that like?
Well, again, I sort of glided through life, I have to say, kind of impervious to the realities of the world, like most young people, and I'm going to include that all the way up through the 20s, age 20, and all the way up approaching 30. When you're young in those years, you're kind of preoccupied with yourself, your immediate friends, your career. Finally, when you get a job, you're climbing. I got involved in the corporate world. I was climbing the corporate ladder, I thought, and I didn't take much of an interest in what the heck was going on in the real world until I was in my mid-20s, and then, of course, that was another change, a huge change in my life. I discovered I had a crusader gene. I didn't know that, but when I found out that everything I had taken for granted, like freedom, like the freedom to go where I wanted to and be what I want to be or not be. I make my own mistakes and all of those things. I discovered that there were people out there in high places who had other plans for me. And that sort of shook me up a little bit. And I quit my job with a big company I was working with, and I became a crusader. And the rest is history.
Define what that means to you. When you say crusader, I mean, that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What does that mean to you? What does crusader mean?
What it means to me is that I suddenly became, I found that I had the feeling of being responsible for things in the world. Until that time, it was all about me. How am I looking? Am I making money? Can we move up in a better house? Can we go on a nice trip? Can we have all the material things and look good? And then all of a sudden, I realized that there were other things in life that were really more important than that, like your liberty, your health, for example, and the quality of your friends and what you were learning, and learning about the subtleties of life, not just the exterior mechanical things. And on top of that, and that was kind of an awakening, but then on top of that, I had this urge to do something about it, which I've observed in later years, that not everybody who is awake really feels that they can do or want to do anything about it. They like to be informed. They read a lot of books, and they will go to seminars and meetings, and they'll read a magazine or contribute money to a political candidate. But heavens, the idea that they might actually do something to change the world never crosses their mind. You know, well, I can't, just one person, what can you do? So by being a crusader, I decided that, by golly, I was going to save the world, you know?
So,
and I'm still that way, by the way.
So let me poke on that a little bit, because, you know, I think at that age, you know, when I was at age 2, I felt the same desire. That fire burns, you know. And then in my culture, we have like rites of passage, and I noticed that you know, in today's you know, American culture, Americana culture, you know, young males don't have a lot of rites of passage, and that fire just kind of burns in them, and they don't have a place to release it or focus it on. And I'm wondering, do you think that was kind of what was burning in you at that time?
Yeah, that would be a good way of describing it. There was a fire in there, all right, but I didn't know what it was. But it didn't take long when I realized that there were people out there that had plans for me, and I didn't like their plans. And I realized that I started to say, well, I'll write a letter to my congressman, you know, the typical thing, letter. And then I discovered that my congressman was the problem. Well, I'll write to the senator. Well, the senator was the problem. I'll write to the president. Well, the president is the problem. And, well, I'll call the police. Well, the police were corrupt. And everywhere I looked, all of these authority figures and institutions that I thought were there to protect me, I discovered, to my dismay, they were there to plunder me and to use me. This is not going to work. So that's when I discovered what being a crusader was all about. I was going to change that, by golly.
Okay, so that was in your 20s. So now you're in your 80s. What have you accomplished with your crusading, and how did you continue to do it for all these years? You know, I mean, was there ever a time where you just were burnt out and gave up? I mean, I know you're still out there. You're still educating. You're still on fire at 89. So, has there ever been a point where you said, you know, like, I can't fight anymore?
No, I can't think of any. That was never a thought, never an option. I mean, that's the way to say it. It's not an option. I remember, let me back up a little bit. I was born into kind of a broken family. And fortunately, I was saved by my aunt and my grandmother. They took me in at a very young age. I think I was about probably 11 or something like that. And if it hadn't been for that, who knows? I would have been a totally different person, probably wouldn't even be alive by now, and a lot of things. And what I might have done in my life might not have been very praiseworthy, or I wouldn't even want to talk about it. But anyway, I was taken in and greatly influenced by my aunt, who was a school teacher. And one of the things she used to say, and I didn't understand it until later, she said, I don't know, she said, I am brave enough to fight, but I am too cowardly to surrender. And I didn't understand that, except I knew it was kind of a tricky thing, you know, because when you're a kid, well, surrender is better than fighting if it looks like you can't win. I mean, if you can't win, why would you fight? You know, that sort of thing. And now I discovered in later years, well, even though you think you can't win, there's a good reason to fight, because there's principle involved. And because you know that you're up against a very cruel enemy that loves to torture their prisoners and things like that. So there are a lot of things you become aware of later on. So my life was affected more by that statement than I realized, because I've never even thought about quitting. Quitting, what does quitting mean? That means you're through. That means, it's unacceptable. Patrick Henry said it pretty well. He said, "Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery?" That's our founding fathers went through the same thing, you know. And so here we are doing the same. We're facing this pretty much the same problem, except it's ramped up a little bit. A lot of technology involved now that wasn't involved then, but the principles are the same.
Yeah, I want to get into. So first of all, I want to get into your book and start talking about, you know, your thoughts on the Fed and how it was created and what it's today and what it's morphed into today. and maybe, you know, what we should be focusing on to change that, and whether or not maybe cryptocurrency is the answer to this. But first, I want to ask you about your research. You know, you and I both functioned in a world where the internet didn't exist and cell phones didn't exist. And during that time, you know, you were doing your research, obviously, for your book. You know, how did you come across this information? Where did you, what kind of archives, what kind of research did you do to actually get the material for your book? Can just Google it, you know, I mean, you were actually out there on the hitting the pavement, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. I spent a lot of time in the Los Angeles Public Library looking at microfilm, you know, all the old.
And for those of you youngins out there that don't understand what that was, is they used to take pictures of shit and put it in a file, and you have to get the pictures of these pieces of film and put them in this machine that would shine a light on it, and then you would be able to view them because they were microscopic. So that's what a microfilm was.
Yeah, there were rolls,
newspapers,
rolls about this big around of 35 millimeter black and white film. And the little frame, each frame, or the motion picture goes by at 24 frames a second, and each of those frames in this micro roll that we were using was like one page of the New York Times. So when you're turning the crank, you're going zzz, 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 and the New York Times are going bloop, Monday, whoop, Tuesday, whoop, Wednesday, Thursday. Oh, slow down. What was that? So you search. There was nothing was indexed. You just got to look at all these magazines and newspapers of the period. And it was quite interesting. You get sidetracked a lot. You see something. Well, that's interesting. But that's not what I'm working on. Get back to your track, you know. But that was
so it was the first Google search, right?
Yeah, without an index.
Without an index. Wow. Yeah. So you learn a lot. Yeah, you get sidetracked and go down a lot of rabbit holes. But I bet you learned a lot that way.
Yeah, I did. A lot of it was quite useless, but it was entertaining. But anyway, that's how I did it. Of course, I read all the old books. There were a lot of people that had tried to deal with this topic and did deal with the topic of the Federal Reserve. And there were quite a few books written on it. And of course, I had to read all the books first to see what other people had discovered and what their views were. And then I could sort of analyze, compare, and extract what I thought was the best of the best. And then somebody would, in a book, they would quote somebody else, but they wouldn't tell where they got the quote from. So I'd have to go find that quote, see if it was authentic. And quite often it wasn't. See, that's the trouble with books. You read a book, you say, well, it's in a book, it's got to be true. And I'm here to tell you it's not the case, because sometimes people will take a quote and they say, well, I don't like the way the author said that, so I'll change it so it's more clear.
So what do you think about the information age and you know, and Wikipedia and editing and all of the information that's at your fingertips on the internet in that regards? Because, you know, I mean, you were looking at stuff that was in print, that somebody had actually sat down, took the time to write and publish and put out there. Now we're in the age of the internet where anybody can post whatever they want and put any information up there, change it day to day, move it around. And how do you feel about that?
Well, I guess mixed emotions are the best way to describe it. There's some great stuff. I mean, you can find information in an hour or two on the internet today that might take you a month to find in the libraries, working 10, 12 hours a day in the library until they throw you out, you know. So in that sense, it's a godsend. But on the other hand, you have to be aware that just because it's on the internet, the same as just because it's in the newspaper, doesn't mean that it's true. Yes. So you have to, especially when you're doing research on something that's controversial like I do, where you're going upstream, you're going against the popular opinion. So in that case, you have to be super careful that everything you've got is exactly provable and true. And by that means you have to go to original sources. If somebody says Thomas Jefferson said this, you've got to find where he said it and on what page, or what it was a letter to a friend. Where is it archived? Is the Thomas Jefferson Library, or is the Library of Congress? And you find the page number, and if possible, you get a photocopy of it, and then you can say Thomas Jefferson said this. Otherwise, people say, I don't believe it. I don't believe what this guy Griffin is saying, especially when you're talking about something controversial. Now, Jefferson isn't too controversial today, but when you're talking about J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller and all of the big bankers of the period, back at the turn of the last century, and some of them have pretty unsavory reputations. So you're inclined to believe that when you read something that is unsavory that they said, you can say, well, that's probably true, but look who said it. Of course, yeah, probably true. But if you find something unsavory that was said by one of your heroes, let's say that in your family,
then you'll dive into rabbit holes trying to change that.
Yeah, you say that's not true. I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I mean, you're quoting Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He never said anything like that. So you have to be very careful. And fortunately, the period of history I was working in for the creation of the Federal Reserve, which was back around the 1910, that's where the first meeting was held, where the whole thing started. Fortunately, all those people are dead today. And the politicians, everybody who voted for them are dead too. So now there's sort of a distance. You can talk about these people. That's ancient history. And nobody said that they can't be right because he's a good guy. I voted for him, So once you get past that, it's a little easier to be objective.
Yeah, that's one of the things I have an issue with the, I believe that the younger generation is our future and that they are brilliant because of all this information that they have at their fingertips. But unfortunately, I think that sometimes they can be led into positions where they're just, well, these people are going to tell me what I want to hear. So I'm going to continue down this rabbit hole, and no matter what it is that they say, I'm going to ingest it. I'm going to digest it, and this is going to be the truth for me. And I find a lot of misleading rabbit holes out there that are taking people in crazy directions, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And and some of it's on purpose. I honestly, not believe, I know for a fact that there are some agencies out there, alphabetical agencies, that they have people on the payroll to throw garbage into the grocery bag. So that it stinks up the whole bag, and even though there's a lot of good groceries in there, you think it's all garbage. So if there's something that's coming out that's true, you can expect to have some garbage thrown into it to mess it all up.
Yeah, and even your work, you can find contrary out there to all of your work that says, you're a kook, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're this, you're that, and then there's a whole nother side of the team that says, he's the greatest man that ever lived. He's exposed the biggest sham on the planet. And so, there's all, how do you, so talk to me about your book, and you give me the research that you've done. I want you to verify your book and the research that you've done and lay it out for me real quick.
Well, on the research thing, this is interesting. I thank you for asking that question, because I seldom get asked that kind of a question. Everybody wants to know, well, what happened on Jekyll Island, and who were these people, and why did what did they do? But the question of the research is very, very important, because
it is,
as I said before, when you're dealing with upstream topics, you have to prove everything you say, and there's a lot of stuff. A lot of things you come across that you just know in your gut it's right because it fits. But you can't say it happened unless you can prove it. So I just put it aside, leave it out. What remains is so powerful that you don't need all the other stuff. So you got to get kind of hard-nosed about it. So consequently, I knew from the beginning.
There's something to be said. I don't mean to interrupt you, but there's something to be said about that, because, people look at the hard. You actually chose the hard evidence. You found other stuff, but you said, this is questionable. I don't want to add it because I don't want it to be questioned. So I'm going to leave the verifiable things in my book and leave it at that. So that's how you built the framework for the book.
All of it. Yeah. There were a couple of things in there that I thought were extremely important, and so I put them in, and I would say this cannot be verified, but somebody said this. For example, there's a quotation, you've probably read it 100 times, attributed to Nathan Rothschild. Rothschild is supposed to have said, give me the power to issue the nation's money, and I care not who makes the laws. Yes. Like, everybody's heard that. I'm sure Rothschild said that. If he didn't say it, he thought it. But you cannot prove that he said it. It doesn't show up in his memoirs or any place. It's just everybody quotes him, and because everybody quotes him, it must be true. Well, so I said, this quote cannot be verified. Mm-hmm. However, judging by Rothschild's modus operandi and everything he did, that's pretty much how he operated. So
and we're living that reality today.
Yeah, we're living that. Yeah. So there are times when you quote something and acknowledge that it can't be verified, but it's such a powerful statement that it crystallizes what you're talking about. So it becomes more rhetorical than a quote. And so
just like you said, it fits the narrative. It fits what's actually transpired.
Yeah. So so I had to go to original sources, and that was rich enough. It was amazing to me to see how much material there was really out there, written by the actors, the major actors themselves, either in the form of books or in the form of interviews that they gave to newspaper reporters, where they were quoted and published in the newspapers of the time. So that's a pretty good original source. And then, of course, they have biographers who quote them a lot. So if it's an official biographer of the time, then okay, that's a good, reliable source too.
Yes.
So, but beyond that, there were a lot of books written by authors who were critical of the Federal Reserve, and there was a lot of opinion in those books. I couldn't quote those because that's just opinion, happened to be my opinion in most cases too. But who cares what my opinion is or their opinion? Let's get to the hard facts. And so that's why my book probably has more footnotes than most people are used to looking at, but almost every page is loaded with footnotes and comments about sources. Otherwise, nobody would believe it. And it pays off because, it forced me to be accurate. Like everybody else, I'm human, and I was often tempted to exaggerate. And I'd go get the eraser out. No. That's what you think, but leave that out of it, just to make a point. And a lot of books are ruined that way because the author exaggerates the facts. The facts are bad enough. Just leave them alone. You don't have to put any adjectives in there.
Well, that's good to know. I like that because there is a lot of noise out there about your book, of it being, it being exaggerated, and that's good to hear. It's good. That's what I wanted. I wanted to hear how you did your research, and I wanted to hear what made it tick and what made you tick and why you did what you did, and how you vetted the information. So I appreciate that answer because that was something that I haven't heard answered, and I hadn't heard anybody ask you in some of the interviews that I've seen. So I appreciate that.
Well, it pays off because let me just finish that in my thought because when I finished the book, let's face it, I knew nothing about money and banking when I started down that path. Nothing about it. I mean, that wasn't my field. I'm not sure what my field was. To tell you the truth, I don't think I had one. I went to school to get a diploma. I didn't care. I got it in speech and communications is how it happened to be. But that didn't take much book learning. That was a lot of practice and all that kind of thing. So I was not a student. And I was more interested in, meeting the girls, having a good time, and going to college, all that stuff. That's great. I was supposed to have fun. That's the idea. So now I'm going to tackle the greatest complex scam in the world, banking, international banking in that history. Believe me, I had no idea what I was getting into. It's a good thing because had I known, I would have said, no, that's too big for me. I can't do it. I got to go to college. Got to learn all this stuff in classroom somehow. So anyway, so now the point is that when I was done with this book, this huge thing, 600 pages, and I got it published, I thought, oh man, they're going to slaughter me. I'm
Were you scared?
Oh yeah. I was scared to death because I thought there's going to be some college professor that really knows this stuff. He lived in it all his life. He's going to find that I was wrong on this point and wrong on that point, and I got this all wrong. And I thought, oh man, it's going to come, And I waited for it to happen. The book was out a week, and then 2 weeks, and then a month, and then went a whole year. I wasn't attacked. Oh, somebody wrote and found out that I had one of the czars mixed up. It was Tsar Nicholas II or the third, and said, okay, you can live with that. I corrected that one. Yeah, but nothing significant at all. And then I thought, I'm still going to get slaughtered. One day I was on the East Coast, and I was on a lecture tour. And I was invited to a radio station for an interview on the book. I said, oh, good. That's how we sell the book. We promote it, go on radio stations and talk about it. And so I got there and I walked in, and there was another guy sitting at the table there next to the radio host. And I was introduced to Professor so-and-so from the local college. And this was the big debate. was set up for me. I didn't even know it was going to be a debate.
Oh shit!
I thought, this is my public execution. You know, he's going to tear me
setup.
Yeah, because I know he read my book. See, I thought he had files and files of notes and error points. He was going to just slaughter me all over the place. So the host asked me to state my case. It's in about 2 or 3 minutes. What's your case? What are you saying about the Federal Reserve? So I took a big breath, and I told him, pretty much summarized it, that it was illegal, unconstitutional, immoral. It plundered the American people. It was dishonest. It was the way of funding aggressive wars, and it was, all of the things I could think of. What was wrong with it? How they create money out of nothing, and this causes inflation, steals money from the average working person. And I said, that's my thesis. And so the radio host then said, well, Professor Sohn, what is your response to that? I braced myself, and he put his hands together, clasped them, and he shook his head up and down. And he said, well, everything he says is true, but we're living well, aren't we? I knew then that I had it made. I hadn't made too many mistakes. And of course, that was easy to answer. Well, you may be living well, Professor so-and-so, and I am living fairly well. But how about the millions and millions and millions of people who aren't living so well because of all what I just said?
Yeah.
And we got onto it. So, I was lucky because of the very thing we're talking about. I'm glad you brought this up, because had I gone too far beyond what the facts could demonstrate, why then the professor would have had me on the floor.
Yeah. No, and so since your book came out in 94, right? And so from then until now, have you had, and you don't have to answer this question, but have you had any interaction with anybody? Have the black suits showed up at your house? Have you ever had any interaction with anybody saying you need to knock this shit off or anything like that?
No, nobody has, not yet. And that's kind of surprising, because I kind of expected it. And my wife thinks I'm absolutely insane, because, my other big book, I wrote World Without Cancer. So I took on the health industry, the pharmaceutical industry. And you figure if you got the banks, the international banking system, and the pharmaceutical, how come nobody's showing up at my door?
That's what I'm saying. I hadn't even got into any of your other books, but it's like, okay, so you took on the banks, you took on the pharmaceutical industry. And you're still kicking, and nobody's kicked your door in yet. So
yeah. So I don't know. Maybe they don't want to give any publicity to me, because if they knocked me off, of course, the books would still be there. It might cause a lot of people to read the books because I got bumped off that wouldn't read it otherwise. So maybe they figured that's the case. So anyway, the answer is no, I haven't, but I expect it.
Well, good. Well, then that leads me to my next question. I want to hear from Mr. Griffin your elevator speech, so you can tell all of the audience here what the Fed is, what it does, and what it means in our life, based on all of your research and everything that you've learned to date, and the state that everything is in right now. Give us your elevator pitch on the Fed. Yeah,
I've learned to do that. I can do it even better than that. You can condense things down to very short statements, even the most complex things. And the Federal Reserve can be condensed down to 3 words. It's a scam. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Well, why is it a scam? Now we complicate a little bit. Well, it's a scam because it pretends to be something which it is not. Oh, okay. Well, that's a scam. Well, what does it pretend to be that it is not? Well, okay. Pretends to be a bank, for one thing. It's not a bank. What is it? It's a cartel. What? Most people, they're not even quite sure what a cartel is, but they know that there's a drug cartel in South America, and is that kind of a cartel? Well, pretty close to that, but I'm thinking more of the corporate cartel, which by a dictionary definition is when companies in a certain field, which are on the surface at least are competitors, they'll join together and form an association, and they agree not to compete with each other. They agree to fix prices, or in this case, the banks got together to fix interest rates and to regulate themselves. And so that mainly this was to keep out competition, keep the new banks from coming in. And the big banks would dominate the field forevermore, because they would be able, they set their own regulations, the cost of entry and the regulations of compliance and all that sort of thing. It makes it too expensive for startups to occur. And of course, they can set limits on how much money they can create out of nothing, and the fact that they can create money out of nothing. All of those rules and regulations are set by the cartel in this case. So the first part, though, is it's a cartel, and it's nothing more than that. And these banks agree not to compete with each other and all move in unison. And they create money out of, well, you can say they create money out of nothing, which is true, but it's even worse than that. They create money out of debt. When the banks loan money to you or to a corporation or to a government or to any institution, most of it they don't have. They loan money they don't have. That's the kind of a startling thing. Well, then how could they loan money they don't have? Well, they just create it out of nothing. They may have on their asset balance sheet maybe 10% of the loan in the form of government bonds or corporate certificates, stock certificates or something, but there's 10%. Now the other 90%, they just create out of nothing. And they just...
Which is this fractional reserve banking thing.
That's the name they give it, fractional reserve banking. But the essence of it is that they don't have it to lend, so they create it. So the whole money supply in America and the world now, for the most part, is money that sprang into being based on debt. And so that's amazing.
And not the people's debt, the bank's debt that they've created for themselves, correct?
No, they've created the debt for the people. The person is comes to the bank and wants to borrow, let's say wants to borrow $100,000 from the bank. And the bank says, well, we've only got 10,000 here in our assets, but that's okay. Here's a check for $100,000. It's a loan to you.
Well, yeah, I mean, they pass that off as, but they've actually created it themselves, and they created the debt themselves, and then passed it along to the consumer.
That's right. They create the debt instrument. It's a loan sheet of paper. It's a loan, IOU. That's it. Yeah. Government bonds, and the basis for all the 90% of the money in circulation is basically an IOU. So it's a piece of paper that says IOU. You better pay it back to me, or else we come take your house, we come take your factory, and we come take your farm, and all that stuff. So it's a fraud, but it's a very lucrative fraud, because if you can create money out of nothing, you don't have to charge an awful lot of interest on it to show a profit. And that's the game they play. That's the game they play.
Yeah.
So I could go on, but I'll take your question.
Yeah. So now let's talk about cryptocurrency then, because I want to know your opinion on it, because it can be said that cryptocurrency is created out of nothing. And here it is. And what was your thoughts on cryptocurrency when you first heard about it, and what do you understand about it?
Well, in the beginning, of course, it was a big mystery. I understood that it was digital money, but then credit cards are digital money.
Everything's digital money, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the essence of it. And then I remember all the talk in the beginning, still it's a favorable argument that this would take the creation of money, the scam of taking money creating it out of nothing, take the scam away from these big bad bankers, and give it not to the government as usually what they do, but give it to the people themselves, so that they could create money out of nothing and call it cryptocurrency. So they give the scam to the people. But the trick was that there was going to be a built-in limit to the amount of cryptos that could be created in any one crypto. Put them all together, of course, it's unlimited. And that's really where it's going. So the argument that the quantity of money can be limited in the crypto world is a false argument, because when you add up all of the cryptocurrencies, it's unlimited, and that's all gets blended together in a clearinghouse. So it's actually easier to expand the money supply with cryptos than with the present banking scam. So, but the idea was it would be beyond the reach of governments and the banks, so they couldn't plunder you. And so I thought, well, that's a pretty good, and confidentiality too, privacy. was to be a major factor. So that's what caught my attention. I thought anything that does that, count me in. And but then later I became aware that the banks themselves, from the very beginning, were, at least behind the scenes, were the biggest advocates of cryptocurrency at all. And they were spending billions of dollars in developing it. So I thought, well, wait a minute. Why are they doing this if it's going to be against their best interests? So my awareness of it, my attitude toward it has changed from the beginning to where it is now. I've always had a lot of question marks about it.
Yeah.
And by the way, I like cryptocurrencies. I have cryptocurrencies because I see it as a speculative market, and there's money to be made. And I think most people are in it for that reason. And they read that such and such a currency is going up. Oh, it goes up today. Oh, double today. I'm going to buy some. Not because they expect to use it as money, but they want to get it because they're going to make money.
Speculative asset. Well, that's what its biggest use case has turned into, as a speculative asset versus the freedom of money, which it was supposed to be. And then it became, I think that even cryptocurrencies, and I don't know if the banks themselves had anything to do with the corruption of cryptocurrency. I know people who are large miners, and a lot of the corruption that I've seen has been with the miners themselves and the actual nefarious element that got involved. So we have the real smart cerebral guys in cryptocurrencies that actually create the content, create the actual technologies. And then we've got these nefarious actors that have gotten involved that found a way to make some money off of this. So they've kind of teamed up with the tech guys, and they've created cryptocurrencies have turned into a cesspool of viper den, so to say. And so I was very jaded myself for a long time. I watched it. I started getting involved in getting my own cryptocurrencies in like 2014. I've known about it since 2010 when it first launched. I started getting involved in 2014, saw it as a speculative asset myself. First, I listened to the whole narrative, the libertarian element of it being, hey, freedom of money. This is how we're going to get rid of the banks, blah, 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 everything in line with your books and whatnot. But then I saw the change happen. And I saw the bad actors get involved. And then I saw, even like you said, some of the banks start to get involved. And at that point I was like, this is turning into something that it wasn't supposed to be. And then in 2017, we saw this big boom. We saw a lot of the banks get involved. We saw a lot of big money come in from the CMEs and everything. And then it dumped on it. They pulled the rug out from under it and they left. And it left cryptocurrency in ruins. And it left everybody with a bad taste in their mouth. And all the things that you just said, the reasons why you were like, a little jaded about crypto, was exactly how a lot of us felt. And then about right as the bull market ended in 2017, 2018 in December, guy by the name of Richard Hart, actually, and I don't know if you know who he is, but he called the top and said, hey, it's all over, guys. It's going to be a bear market for the next 3 years. They've ruined cryptocurrency. And he was really pissed off about it. And there was something about the way he said it, the emotion that he put into it, that said, hey, man, this guy really is saying something real here. So myself and a bunch of other people said, well, let's listen to what Richard has to say about this and kind of watch him, because he said, you know what, I might have something coming out myself later, guys. Well, for the next few years, he went to work and started building his own cryptocurrency, which is what we call Hex. And what he did was a very simple product. And nobody had thought about it in cryptocurrency until he did. And what Richard's philosophy was, well, if you're going to replace the banks, if you're going to go in and replace the banks, you got to replace the bank products. And what's the most popular bank product to date? Well, there's a $7 trillion market in the CD market. And it is one of the most popular products at the bank is the CD. So what he did was he said, well, I'm going to take this cryptocurrency, this programmable money, and I'm going to program a CD that you operate yourself, where the inflation of the coin is paid to the people who own the coin. The stakers themselves, the people who hold the value and store the value, are the people that are going to get the inflation. and it's going to be an immutable contract. So nobody has any keys that can change anything, turn anything on, turn anything off. It's going to be just like Bitcoin. It's going to be launched. It's going to be out there. You can't stop it. And it's going to just print interest, and you can stake it for as long as you want, meaning that you can build a CD ladder. You can put it out for up to 15 years, or you can put it out for just a week, a day, whatever. You operate the contract, you mint the interest, and the interest is actually the inflation on the coin. So it's really like you're the bank, you're the Fed, and you're also the user, the end user. So you operate it yourself. Nobody else can operate it, and nobody can stop it. And literally, it's been the highest appreciating asset. I think it was at least the highest appreciating asset in 2020. I think we've gone over 600x in just a little over a year. So I mean, it's been a really, really interesting project to be involved with. And what do you think about programmable money? I don't know how much you know about it, but what do you think about that aspect? Not just, Bitcoin itself, which is send, receive, store of value, but the programmable side of money, being able to replace the Fed and the problem that we have with it here in this society.
Well, I don't know quite what to think about it, because I have so many questions buzzing around in my head. There are two issues there. Getting the Fed out of the picture is, of course, we have to do that because it's a cancer. And if we don't abolish the Fed, the Fed will abolish us. It's one or the other. And so that part is clear. But when you automatically tie that to, well, that means Hex, or it means Bitcoin, or it means Doge, or whatever, Ethereum. I don't know. That's another issue, whether those two are tied together. To me, right now, I'm worried about the fact that guys like Schwab, the World Economic Forum, are talking about the Great Reset, and they're obviously going as fast as they can to duplicate the social credit system that they have in China, where everybody is on a digital currency, and you get paid in this digital currency. And if you don't follow the rules, they say you didn't behave as a good boy or girl, then all of a sudden you can't fly, or you can't get on a rapid transit. You can't. All of a sudden you can't pay your rent on an apartment. And if you're really bad, like you are, and like I am, you might not be able to. Your card or your chip will be turned off completely, and you won't be able to eat. You'll have to sit out there begging out there and ask for charity from everybody to just survive. And they've figured out that is the ultimate control over human beings, much more effective than bayonets. So that is where we're headed. And I'm jumping ahead to that, and then I want to work backwards. How could a crypto survive or allow us to get around that? If that can be done, I'm really interested. If it can't be done, then I'm looking for something else,
Yeah. Well, the first answer to that question is it has to be a finished crypto. And I only know of one that I can trust, which is Hex. And I don't say that because I'm part of the community and, my stream is dedicated to it. The reason I'm part of the community and the reason my stream is dedicated to it, because I know that it works. I, like you, did my research. I, like you, made sure that I vetted this thing. I wanted to see an immutable contract that was launched and finished. I didn't want one that was open-ended like a lot of these promise coins out there that say, hey, well, we're going to do this, or we're going to launch this later, or they have these switches where they can turn it off and on at any time and shut your trading down or shut you off from using it. Those kinds of things where you don't hold your keys. You don't actually have control of your keys. I don't know if you've heard the statement, not your keys, not your crypto. But if you use a middleman, a bank, or you use any of these other platforms out there to have custody of your crypto and your keys, then you've given up the power of what cryptocurrency is. See, because you have that key, you can literally, like for instance, let's just say you had to leave your country or you had to go somewhere else. How are you going to take your value with you? Well, what if you're a gold bug? Well, you're not going to carry, your pounds of gold with you. You're not going to be able to get across the border with a bag full of cash. You're not going to be able to carry coins or valuables, but in cryptocurrency, you can actually have those keys in your head wrote down, and nobody can take those from you. You can walk across the border. You can fly anywhere and have those keys with you. And then all you have to do is re-enter them into a system and download those keys, and you'll have your cryptocurrency with you at that point. So it gives you that freedom that you own them. And if a cryptocurrency didn't have that option, then I wouldn't get involved with it. And that's what Hex had. It had that option, and it was a finished product. And then the other thing that Hex did was it actually audited itself. So it got 3 audits. I don't know if you know this, but the actual Bitcoin product itself has had inflation bugs. I think it's had 2 inflation bugs. It's had about 3 bugs altogether. That where somebody could actually have minted as many coins as they wanted. And that's not good. And there's nobody working on Bitcoin to fix it. So when Hex was built, it was audited to make sure that the code was proper, to make sure that it did what it did. And it was launched. And at that point, it's on the blockchain, and you cannot stop it. You cannot change it. You cannot do anything but actually utilize a contract, which is store value in a stake and get paid on the value of time. And it's at this point, what's really amazing about it is because all of us early adopters got in, and there's only about, I think, 10% of the supply that's staked. We're making 40% APY right now.
Well, that's very good. What can you say about that? But I'm thinking ahead.
Yeah, think ahead. Let's hear it.
If we wanted to get on an airplane and fly someplace, could we use Hex to do that?
You mean to pay for the flight or to take it with us?
No, to pay for the flight to get out of.
Well, at this point, nobody's taking cryptocurrency anywhere. They started to get adoption in like 2017. They were starting to have these things where you can buy this with crypto, or you can buy that with crypto. Well, a lot of that went away. I think that maybe there's a new revival of that where people are starting to take Bitcoin. But I mean, even like Bitcoin conventions aren't even taking Bitcoin as payment for their conventions. So it's cryptocurrencies have failed as a medium of exchange. And that's not where their value is at this point. There are too many other products out there that are better than that. PayPal, Cash App, those kinds of things are actually working better than cryptocurrency as far as being
I'm glad you
mentioned
that, because that reminds me of the worry I have about the whole field. Is to take PayPal, for example. If they don't like you, they'll just close your account down. Bingo, you're out of business. Yeah.
Exactly. So that is the value of cryptocurrency, is that you if you have a completed contract, it can't be shut down. If the keys belong to you and it is immutable and on the blockchain, then you can't be shut down. And Hex has been 100% uptime since it launched over a year and a few months now. So that's the value of a cryptocurrency, is that you can't shut it down if it's off and running. Just like Bitcoin, you can't really shut it down. Now, if you have your Bitcoin on an exchange, they can shut down that exchange. Yeah. Because you don't hold your keys.
If I could be the devil's advocate for the moment,
yes.
What would I care if it can't be shut down or not if I can't buy anything with it?
Well, you can exchange it through systems. At this point, there are off ramps. There are many different off ramps that you can use to turn your cryptocurrency into dollars.
Can those off ramps be switched on and off?
Oh yeah. Well, and that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest problem with cryptocurrency at this point, is those off ramps. But it's going to take, like you said, those people that are woke to actually start taking as a means of exchange. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much the story that as I understood. Until that happens, it's pretty much theoretical. It's all speculation, and there's some money to be made. And I like the idea that there are a lot of creative people, smart people trying to work on this project. And sooner or later, I think it's possible. if they're left alone, which they won't be left alone, they'll come up with something to make it really all work. I do know that I think it's been three years now, the International Monetary Fund has been working with all the central banks of the world, creating some kind of a clearinghouse for all of the cryptos to be cleared through here. So every product, every service will have its number, and it'll be in the computer, and you can buy anything with no matter what crypto you have, it goes through the clearinghouse, and you can buy anything that's on that register of these numbers, 12 or 15 digits. But there's the switch. There's the on and off switch again.
Exactly. And I have a couple of the credit cards. They're actually cash cards that you can spend your crypto on, but you do have to put your crypto on an exchange, and then the credit card you can use and spend as cash. You can spend your crypto as cash. So you can do it, but again, like you said, there is a middleman there. There is a middleman involved.
Yeah. So that seems to be a challenge, and that's hope somebody comes up with a solution to that. How you can get wide acceptance, and at least the acceptance of the things you need, like groceries, and
yeah.
What can I say?
And I mean, again, person to person, peer to peer, you can, exchange. Like Mr. Griffin, if you asked, the captain for some money, and I said, well, I'm going to send you some hex, and you say, okay, we can still do that. That can be accomplished. But again, turning it into cash and buying milk and bread and paying your rent, that could be another story. So that is the pitfall of crypto at this point. But for now, everything is still operational. They do have their finger on the switch, though, if that be the case.
Yeah, that is the challenge. Now, the only question I'm wondering about is if at any point along this internal chain, let's say you've got enough people, and it's a big enough chain that you've got a lot of people involved. If there was some way to switch it over into gold or silver, tangible assets, that would be a potential or theoretical solution, because that in turn can be turned into groceries.
I think putting some gold dust on a scale is probably just about as difficult as trying to spend some crypto, though, isn't it?
Well, gold dust, yeah, right. Yeah. Well, let's talk about silver. Let's talk about silver then. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, or
remember in the good old days when you and I were young,
yep.
A dime in your pocket could buy quite a bit. A dime.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we used to go get Coke bottles for a dime, and we'd go to the liquor store, and we had a few. We used to be able to get a couple Coke bottles and buy some candy, some soda pops, and we were happy going home.
And if you go all the way back, when I was a little kid in grade school, down near the school there was a candy store, and you could go in, and for a penny you could buy a long stick of licorice, and that was a great thing to have a penny candy. Remember, there's even a song about that. It was popular a couple of decades ago. You could buy a lot for a penny. Now, of course,
things have changed, my friend. Things have changed.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, you know what? I know you've got a dinner appointment, and I don't want to keep you any longer. Yeah. I appreciate you. It's been a really awesome talk. I want to ask you one more question, right. I want you to actually give I want you to give the younger generation here, your best advice. What can you give them for advice of what we're all looking at right now, in the crypto space? What's your advice?
In the crypto space. I don't think I'm informed enough to give advice in the crypto space. I'm still looking
to the youth.
I'm looking for advice myself, but if I had to give advice in order to get out of jail or something, let's see, what would my advice be? My advice would be is buy crypto, and but don't spend your last dime on it. Don't sell the farm to do it. And as you're making money, take your winnings out as you go and convert it into gold and silver.
Oh, nice. Okay. Right on. Well, no, we appreciate you. And hey, we'd like to adopt you. Anytime you have a crypto question and you want to talk to our community, please feel free to drop us a line, and maybe we'll pull you back up. If you've got some questions, we'll bring you back on and say, hey, I've got some questions about this, and that. And we'll send you some information about about Hex so that you can understand a little bit more about it, because I think your insight is going to be really helpful, because you understand a lot more than you think you do about what it is we're doing here, because we're literally creating with Hex. We're creating a whole banking system, a Federal Reserve, a banking system, end users, the whole thing right here within this crypto, just based on this little store of value that we have, which is like a crypto CD, storing the time locking the value of money. And it's programmable, immutable, and you can't stop it. So, and we've literally in the last week, Hex has gone from about 2.6 cents to all the way up to almost 5 cents in just the last week.
Boy, that's even better than penny candy.
Yes, it is. So we're all real excited right now, and it's a really great time for Hex. And we're getting ready to fork Ethereum, which means we're going to make our own blockchain. It's going to be called Pulse. So it's a really exciting time for all of us here. We call ourselves Hexicans, and it's been really nice having you on. Thanks for coming in.
All right, well, thank you. If I could just make a little plug before I go.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Yeah, I'm really totally involved right now in something called the Red Pill Expo, and this will be our 6th one. And the Red Pill Expo, maybe you haven't heard of it, but it's based on the meme, take the red pill, man, wake up, get out of illusion and face reality the way it really is. Comes from the sci-fi movie The Matrix. So we've had, this will be the number 6, and it's going to be really big. You'll see the lineup of speakers. I urge people to go to the website and look us up at Red
What's
Pill.
the website? Oh,
it's redpillexpo.org.
redpillexpo.org. We'll put it in the comment section down below so people can go check it out. And I'll just let you know, our community, literally, they have a movie night where they all watch movies together online, and they've been showcasing The Matrix over the last week, because I'm telling you, the Hex community is red pillars.
Okay, well, you'll see something there that you won't see very many places, and I won't plug it anymore, because I just urge you to go to the site and take a look at it. And this is a face-to-face meeting. I mean, we're not interested. We're doing a live stream, of course, because some people just can't make it. But this is going to be big. People are coming in person, and I know a lot of them are driving clear across the country. And the idea is let's see America from the ground for a change. Those old-fashioned road trips that we don't.
Where are you guys going to be? Where are you guys going to be?
At Rapid City, South Dakota.
Rapid City, South Dakota.
Yeah, that's one of the few free states. I mean, you can walk around the streets without a mask. You can go in a restaurant. You can, the kids are in school and all kinds of things there. And of course, it's the gateway to Mount Rushmore, which is a fantastic thing to see if you never have seen it. So, that's where it's going to be. Rapid
Can I give
City.
you a quick 5 minutes on Mount Rushmore? Just so when you go to visit, so you can think about your buddy, the captain. So I'm Native American. I'm a half breed. My mom's Polish and French, white girl, and my dad's a full-blooded Indian. And those people there are family. That's called the Pasapas. That's called the 6 grandfathers there, that mountain. And Mount Rushmore was there, for a lack of better term, that was Mount Sinai to those people. So when you go there and you pay your respects to those faces that are up there, remember the faces that were removed from that, which were the 6 grandfathers. The reason they carved those faces up there was because they were literally, and you'll see 1 or 2 of them left, those were literally old Indian faces that were up there that were just naturally formed in the mountain. And because they look like faces, they carved those other faces on it. So when you go there, just pay your respects to those people there, the first people of Mount Rushmore, and those mountains, which is there's Mount Sinai, which is very, very sacred and very, very important to them. I'm not saying to say that to be anti. I'm saying that to just remember the deeper respect that belongs there to that place, because I have respect for those faces that are on there too.
Yeah, of course, it's history that we should know about. Now, if you take the tour there, will they explain any of that?
I don't know.
Will the guides there explain any of that?
You know how history's been covered up, and
but no need to cover that up. That's part of the history. It should be there.
They may say it, but if you look up there, you'll see those grandfathers up there. You'll see the 2 that are left, and you'll see those faces. If you can actually Google Mount Rushmore and what it looked like before the faces were carved on there. You can see some pictures, and you'll actually see the 6 grandfathers up there. and just know that was their Mount Sinai. That was where their God dwelled and lived. So that was their hill. But anyway, again, not to disrespect what's there now, because I'm a Marine, and I'm a true-blooded American myself. But have respect for the faces that are up there, but also the faces that were removed. So just remember that lesson.
Understood. Yes, I'll try and check that out.
All right, sir. Well, it was great having you. Appreciate you coming. You have a great rest of the evening. All right, everybody.
We'll see you there. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you. Have a good one.